Hi, folks. Welcome to what is more than likely to be our last show until after Christmas. I Write Radio podcast videocast of Wednesday, the 23rd. I think we've got the last FMQs of the year to chat about. Stuart wants to give some of our listeners a shout out. Without Jimmy, I'm not sure it's worth doing the the competition for the worst and the best of our politicians of the year.
We can boil it down a bit further, perhaps, by
we'll see if we can get
some of the suggestions.
Aye, and I was thinking that we could maybe actually do a wee sort of light-hearted Christmas job.
Well, I'd like to wish everybody the season's greetings and the best Christmas and New Year you can possibly have. I've got myself a kind of hot Christmas drink here.
I would raise a glass to you folks, but unfortunately with my infirmity, I'm liable to drop it.
That is not a good thing to do, especially if it was a nice malt or something. That would be criminal.
And I have a nice malt sitting ready. All that said, Jimmy has messaged to say he'll try and get here, but not sure he can make it, which is a tad unfortunate because we're both highly suspicious that he's partying in the mobile studio.
Oh, you can't do that. That would not be on. Have you noticed how I managed to get the color but working on my camera? See?
Yes, I was a bit confused how you managed to get black and white.
It wasn't meant to be black and white.
I wondered if it was a very old camera. But enough of this nonsense.
Yes, let's give some of our loyal fans a bit of a name check. We haven't really been. We're really bad at doing this, so pay attention, everybody, in case your name comes up. And if your name doesn't come up, I'm sorry, really sorry. Right, we'll start off with Kath McCardle, and then there's the three Peters: Peter Mailing, Peter A. Bell, and Peter Curran. There's Sandra Anderson, and then there's Keith Lockhead. Keith, far away. Then we've got Ina, who's very good at commenting. Simon McParland, Bill Bryan, Galen Manfrey, I can't quite pronounce that, it's difficult for me. James Dryborough, Matt McCardle, Ridiculous Moon, Angela Leach, thank you, Angela, Mark Harper, George Miller, Old Bob. I think we'll stop at that.
Well, thanks for listening and watching, folks. It's nice to know we're not talking to ourselves all the time, although I fear we may be much of the time. And a happy Christmas, and
thanks to everybody for listening and watching, and yes,
and a Merry New Year wherever you are. I hope some of you might find yourselves in COVID-free areas of the world and be able to party.
I wonder where that would be.
There must be some island somewhere that hasn't had COVID yet, you would hope.
South Korea.
Well, it was not an outbreak in a nightclub. Don't go to South Korean nightclubs if you're going to party.
New Zealand?
Yeah, New Zealand's doing well.
Yes, to friends in New Zealand, I hope you can say thank you to a very efficient Prime Minister by the sounds of it.
I noticed Enna had a comment on the YouTube channel about one of our legacy videos. That was actually myself, Stuart, and a chap called Alex Grant, who's no longer with us. Alex, unfortunately, died very suddenly and surprisingly 2 years ago. And we miss him.
Yes, we do miss him.
We do miss him. He had a great intellect and often could find that question that turned everything on its head. So I'm wishing Alex's family a Merry Christmas, even though he's not there to enjoy it with them. FMQs, Stuart.
Yes, FMQs. Well, obviously, if you were reading the papers or the press, you'd know that the First Minister, it was a gotcha by the Sun newspaper, they managed to get a photograph of her in a bar without a mask.
I think at a wake in a bar, socially distanced from two ladies who looked to be of a certain age, without her mask.
It does sound a lot worse than it looks when you get to see the photograph. The First Minister is clearly keeping her distance. She's standing behind a table. There's a space. Then there's another table, and then there's a couple of old ladies sitting, or even three sitting at this other table. It would appear the First Minister is also very close to the door. The story, she added no detail to her apology in the chamber today, but it looks as though the story was, I heard that she was going out the door. That's why she'd taken her mask off, presumably going out the door and getting in her car, and got distracted by a couple of other people who probably said, hello there, First Minister, give us a shout.
And the point of this really is, First Minister's questions, nary a mention made by anybody, apart from the First Minister herself, who gave a very full apology, and as you've already said, made no excuses, which is probably just as well, because no sooner had it broken on the front page of the Sun than social media lit up with photographs of members of political parties scattered across the UK, disobeying the rules in worse manners. But it seems to have been accepted that it was a simple mistake.
Simple mistake. I'm sure we've all made them. It really cannot be counted in the same bracket or league, even in the league, even in a division below. Driving from London to Barnard Castle, then to your home at Durham, and then from Durham to Barnard Castle to check out your eyesight, and then back to Durham, and then back to London. I'm sorry.
I would like to congratulate the Sun newspaper, who I have no doubt have had a photographer stalking her for the last 9 months looking for just such a mishap. And it proves it's always worth persevering, folks. Eventually you will get your gotcha.
Whether it does you any good or not is another thing.
Well, I wonder what will happen to the Sun's circulation.
And at what point will the people of Scotland do what the people of Liverpool have done and banned the Sun?
Well, I'm not going to call for a ban on the Sun. If you want to buy the Sun, you buy the Sun. I don't. There are better reasons than a picture of the First Minister not to buy that rag. But I'll be interested to see if it affects the circulation at all.
So what did we think of First Minister's questions today? Low-key?
Yeah, it felt more like a traditional Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Greens sort of question time with Baroness Davidson going with all these small businesses scattered across the country, which she doesn't seem to realise the money's coming from Westminster. I mean, I'm not quite sure what she would do if Nicola Sturgeon turned around and said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to put tuppence on the top 10% of earners so we can give that money to small businesses scattered all over the country.
I was missing our former opinionator, Phil Attridge, when Willie Rennie opened his mouth, because he did star today. It was a low bar to star in, but he did star today because he got up there and had a go at equating because the First Minister is obviously very critical about Brexit. Brexit should be stopped, not happening on the 1st of January at the moment, given the difficulties we're in. He took the opportunity to have a go at the possibility, remote as it may seem, of just a referendum, let alone negotiating getting out of the United Kingdom, an independence referendum coming up. He thought he was doing well, but the First Minister had him she had his guts for garters. What's my expression?
A slam dunk.
There you go. More
Um,
modern.
it, I don't really quite understand why he did it. He was never going to win the argument, you know. She hasn't talked about independence for a long enough time, and he gave her the opening. I mean, it's noticeable that she is never the person that uses the word. You know, it's always because somebody else brings it up, and that opens the door for her to faultlessly step through and slap them a bit. Richard Leonard.
I thought he got very close to a serious slapping, to be honest.
I was quite surprised she didn't react more vigorously.
Yes, there were one or two places where he really, you could have said, well, given the propensity that the First Minister has to respond, she doesn't suffer fools gladly. God, I'm coming up with rubbish today, aren't I?
His question was, God, I've forgotten.
Care homes.
Oh, right, yeah.
There's been a report.
Oh, this is the
Human Rights Report.
Yeah.
Well, we don't really know who's really responsible. I'm not going to even drill down at all into the detail about care homes, and we've covered it so often. Let's not. But it is a tragedy. I'm not sure there was any point bringing it up today when everybody wants a wee bit of cheer and goodwill.
I think care homes is best summed up by the Tories attacked the Scottish government in order to defend the private care home setups because they're mostly supportive of the Tory party. The Labour Party attacked the Scottish government about care homes because it's the only chink in the armour they can see. And Nicola Sturgeon tries not to blame anybody for what happened in care homes because I think she's wisely going to wait until she sees the results of any inquiry.
Right, exactly. And she said in her response that she's the only person, as far as she knows, the only government in the UK to have set up a public inquiry already, well, or to promise a public inquiry already. It was noticeable that Neil Findlay, who also likes to be a bit of an attack dog, he brought up the topic, but he just handed it on a plate to her. Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. Neil Findlay's arguing for more visiting under better conditions, i.e. inside.
Yeah, closer, more chance of infecting your loved ones.
Now, and that's kind of fair of Neil Findlay, actually. I mean, he's a Labour member, and he believes that the Scottish government, that governments should be able to dictate how you act. But that wouldn't involve a law dictating to care homes how to act. So they would actually have to tell private care homes, corporation care homes, etc., that they must allow X number of visitors inside the building, that if they're going to follow Neil Findlay's
it's just not
thinking.
They're not going to do
that.
Not
going to happen.
Not going to happen. They're not insured. They're probably not insured to do that anyway.
Well, and even if they were, if anything went wrong, who are they going to sue? The Scottish government. You know, as I keep saying, for me, it's the reason I'm not the First Minister, obviously, or for that matter, any sort of paid politician. I would be asking them to give me the rate of death that they consider acceptable to allow visits in care homes. Mm. How many people are you prepared to sacrifice so that, you know, it's the same with the mental health thing.
Look, Norrie, you can save yourself a lot of words here. Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah.
You're on the horns of a dilemma. You're sitting on the fence is not the right one. But I mean, honestly, what do? You let more people in to make the relatives happy, but then the relatives will be complaining because their relative died. Make up your mind. What do you want?
Well, and that's the point. I mean, it's a bit like the health service education thing. There is always something to complain about.
Yeah, we've been
as an opposition.
Yes, we've been going on about that for a long time.
And care homes are just going to become another one of them. Well, have become another one of them. What was Patrick's question?
Patrick Harvey.
The Greens.
I did write it down. What did he say?
He was quite supportive, was he not?
Not particularly.
I can't remember.
Duty to cope with the impact of Brexit and COVID. Impact on the poor, basically, I've summed it up as. What did he do? He didn't really, he didn't make a splash, shall we say. He made very little impact on the occasion, I would say.
Well, I think the other Green that did make an impact, to jump ahead a bit, was Ross Greer with his complaint about Flamingo Land.
That's a bit like, it's a bit like our Stead's Place thing here in Leith in Edinburgh, but a much bigger issue. It is a planning issue that really caught light in the community there in Balloch on Loch Lomond. And a lot of locals, and particularly people don't want, Flamingo Land is a kind of, what do you call it? A
Theme park.
Is it a theme park?
Is it not?
It's one of those places where you have it's like a fun fair, a giant fun fair. I don't know what you call them these days. I've never been. Well, no, that's not true. I have been to a big one, Alton Towers, but one of those kind of places. And they want to build one right on the edge of Loch Lomond in a national park. And it was bumped. It was blocked. And now apparently they're coming back. But they're coming back at Stead's Place here in Leith as well.
Well, I don't quite understand this, because my understanding was they already owned the land.
Well, judging by the First Minister's answer today, she said that the land belongs to Scottish Enterprise, and they will only sell it to Flamingo Land if they're granted permission, planning consent by the Parks Authority.
Well, I mean, somebody got something wrong somewhere then, because I read, and I think it was the Herald, that they already owned the land.
No, not from what the First Minister said today. She's pretty good on things like that.
She is. She is.
I wasn't impressed by. Well, I wasn't impressed by one thing the First Minister said, shall I say, when she was talking about. It was the questions from Richard Leonard, and I'm not going to go into the detail. It was some horrible questions, but she said she will not wait till 2021. I'm not quite sure what she was answering to today, but what she did say, which struck me, it stuck out, which is that the acute phase of this pandemic, and she won't, basically what she seemed to be implying that this inquiry into care homes affair will not start until the acute phase of this pandemic is over. So when will that be? Who will decide that?
Yeah. When will it be? I mean, and that it's a strange thing. I mean, I know why they want an inquiry to start, because they want fodder. They want crap to throw at the First Minister. And so they want something before May's elections. But why would you start an inquiry when the problem was ongoing? Why wouldn't you wait till after the problem was over so you could have the whole picture to inquire into?
Well, let's speculate here, because it's worth it just to speculate here on what is the current thinking about when you could say that this pandemic will be over. And in America, they're talking about the fall at the moment, and that's without it getting worse. Right now, we're in the middle of a period where apparently it's getting worse because of this new variant. By the way, it's not the only new variant. There's a new one in South Africa, and people are banning people coming from South Africa now as well. It's a different one, by the way.
I don't know. I mean, that's a decision for the experts.
But you won't get that in the right-wing press or the BBC because they don't. Boris Johnson doesn't like to give bad news, and the bad news is, I noticed the First Minister when she was asked when the ordinary people, is it people beyond 50, under 50, will get the vaccinations. That won't be until spring, which is an extremely vague answer.
Yeah, but I mean, she can't give a definitive answer because she doesn't know how many vaccines we'll get and when we'll get them.
And did you hear about Tony Blair's outrageous suggestion?
I heard this on the radio this morning and didn't have time to find his list of 7 things, but he seems to think that giving everybody the first part of the vaccine and then just waiting till supply becomes available for the second part.
Yes, well, the idea is that you could vaccinate at the moment, given they've only used half the vaccine they've got at the moment, because you need 2 shots, JAGs. And what he wants to do is to vaccinate another cohort with the vaccine they're holding back for a second shot, and just cross our fingers and hope the second supply of vaccines comes through so they can get their second shots. But that assumes it's, there are many arguments against that, but let's assume that you need that, you get 1 shot and you're 50% protected, and then you get the other one, you're 50% protected. Apparently that's not true. The first shot only gives you 10% protection, and the second one gives you 90% protection.
Which brings me neatly to the tweet I saw from an American saying, why don't we all get together and just get a little bit infected, and that would up the antibodies, and then we wouldn't need vaccines. Obviously has no idea what a vaccine does.
There's an awful lot of people in America that have got partially educated. I don't know what the education system like is in America, but there's an awful lot of people there that just don't know. They don't even know anything at all about the world outside America. Sorry, Americans.
Well, I know some really nice, intelligent, smart Americans. So
yes, I've some good American friends too. I'm sorry, it's just that I just had to go there. My apologies to all my American friends. We can't move on without one go at Willie Rennie again, because what he really did have a go at was this question of, he almost used the term Skexit, Brexit. Scottish independence will be just as tough as Brexit. We've had 4 years of agony. It's getting worse. Don't even think about Scottish independence because it's going to be just as bad, which is clearly not true. And the First Minister she really stuck it to him on that basis. But the answer is always the same. Why should it be? It's not the same. We are not abandoning our friends in Europe. We want to join our friends in Europe.
Well, I think part of it was he had to get his unionist oar in because Keir Starmer had made that speech the other day. I think he felt that he had to get his credentials nailed to the mast.
So what about this extremist news we've heard in the last few days from the history woman?
Oh, did you read her piece in the Spectator?
I have not. I have banned myself. I never read people like Effie Deans or History. These are extremists. Well, these people are terrorists of the mind.
She wrote a piece complaining in the Spectator, complaining about the history and the way it was being taught in schools, basically saying it was SNP propaganda. And what she pointed out was that there were never tanks in George Street.
Well, that's an old story. She's got a new story.
What's this one?
She's calling for a unionist party. She wants the Lib Dems, the Labour, and the Tories to unite into a unionist party for the upcoming election in Scotland.
That's great. They should do that. Yeah, let them do that. Watch the right-wing Tories and the left-wing Labour Party split off to become something else. The Liberal Democrats will join anybody if they think it'll help them win.
And on that basis, the First Minister, she revealed something I didn't know. Apparently, the Lib Dems are now a pro-Brexit party. After fighting for so long against it, they're now a pro-Brexit. I didn't know that.
I'm not sure you could call them pro-Brexit. They have made a decision. David, what's his name? Davy.
Davy's his second name. Ed Davy.
Ed Davy.
See, we could win a quiz working together.
Has said that they're no longer going to be proactive against Brexit. And that's just the way it is.
They've just abandoned it. They've totally abandoned it. I mean, we're in the grip of we're run by a gang of criminals, and the so-called opposition down south have completely given up.
Well,
Have they got a gun to their head or what? But they all threaten to come around and murder their wains.
what relevance have the Liberal Democrats got now anyway?
That's true.
Does it really matter?
There was one last person that popped up, and she's actually quite important. Sarah Boyack. She's a grandee of the Labour Party, is she not?
Yeah, Edinburgh lass. And
she enlightened me about vaccinations that expects, but NHS like Lothian apparently must have held a briefing for the politicians this week, and by the end of March they should have finished vaccinating the over 65s. First Minister, in response to that, said over the 50s should be done by the spring. And 50,000 already had the vaccination. So I just thought
yeah.
I was illuminated. You're now illuminated.
Right. What did you pick up in the press today?
I think it's, our viewers and listeners are very interested in independence. It's our main raison d'etre, is it not?
Yeah.
And Roddy McLeod, Barhead boy, who I interviewed just 3-4 weeks ago, he's got a nice piece today. What does he say? What he says is basically what I've just referred to there. If he does not agree with the theory that we can wear down this government by having another election and having another, however successful the election is for the SNP next May, it won't make any difference. We won't be permitted under a Section 30 a legal referendum. Not that I particularly want that, but let me just finish my point. The point is this: can you imagine if you accept that the people running the government of the United Kingdom at the moment are a bunch of gangsters, and they are. They're handing out money left, right, and centre to all their buddies. They treat the people as though we're all mugs. And do you think they're going to give in to a little bit of pressure from an election in Scotland? You've got to be kidding. And that's what he says. And I'm sorry, the only realistic choice, says, he outlines some kind of procedure where you actually say he wants it actually done by next week, the 31st of December, because on the 1st of January, he reckons the internal market bill comes in.
Right. Tell us what he wants done.
The detail. Oh God, I knew that you were going to be tricky. When the internal market bill becomes active on January 1st, we do not know what legal restrictions the imperialists from London might enact. That is why we must act without delay. No more procrastination. Well, where is the detail?
Well, wait a minute.
It's a bit long.
What does he want us to do?
He wants the SNP to announce to have only one policy for the election next year, which is independence, and to raise it as a plebiscite, so that it will be a plebiscite on independence.
Right. Okay. So the manifesto is one page. The SNP manifesto is one page.
Well, it's one line, I think.
And it says, we will hold an independence referendum if we get the most votes at Holyrood.
There you go.
Right. And all the opposition parties will accept that. During this election, the SNP will only answer questions on a referendum. They won't answer questions on the national health, on education. No, it's they can make it the most important policy, but they cannot make it the only policy.
he built up quite a strong case for getting to that point, but then when he came into the detail of the final paragraph, the reason why I'm not even going to start to read it out because I didn't fully understand it, but I get the point. The point is we are faced by a bunch of gangsters running the country, and do you think they're going to give in to another election? Of course
We
not.
are faced by a democratically elected bunch of gangsters.
Yes, Hitler was democratically
No, he
elected.
wasn't.
Yes,
No,
he was.
No, he wasn't. He gerrymandered the vote. Right. We have got a government that was elected the same way all the other governments have been elected. Okay, they might have told lies, they might have spent money they shouldn't have, but
That's not what I'm complaining about. I'm talking about their actions since they've come into
right.
power.
Yes, but like any government, once they're in power, they're a dictatorship. It's no different from any other government, Stuart. They're just more prepared to do it above the parapet. Now,
oh, whoa! That's a very contentious statement. They're more prepared
right,
to do.
Okay. Do you want?
You're saying they're not any more corrupt than previous governments.
Stuart, I'm trying to argue the point that Barhead Boy makes.
Yeah, but you've just made an outrageous statement that this government is not worse than we've had in our lifetime.
Well, Stuart, we know this government's worse than we've had in our lifetime, only because it's out in the open. They don't care if you know.
No, that's not the way to put it at all.
Well, it's the way I view it. I'm sorry, you disagree with me.
They do care, and they're doing it deliberately. It's not that they don't care, because that's how a gangster works. They want you to know that they are abusive, that they are dangerous, so that you will behave in the way that they want you to.
Stuart, you and I are not really arguing this. I don't know why you're getting het up. I just said they're more open about their behavior than previous governments. I don't for a minute think that we know everything that the Blair government got up to or Thatcher before them. You know, they're the only difference I see between this and previous Westminster governments is this lot don't care if we know.
Well, no, I'm sorry, and that's very opposite from my opinion. They do care. They want us to know.
Well, fine.
And that's by where my definition, that defines a gangster.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't think they care. I don't think they want us to know. I just don't think they give a. But the point I'm making here is that's well off the subject, which was Barhead Boy and his, like so many people, what he wants is UDI. And what he's not prepared to say is UDI.
So what do you mean by UDI?
Unilateral Declaration of Independence. All these guys that go, oh, Section 30, forget it, we're never going to get it, never then tell us how we do it. Because there is only one way to do it without the agreement of the Westminster government, and that is UDI.
Well, we have to talk about the Treaty of Union. That's where we have to go.
My position is that is a path. But even then, if the Westminster government says, no, we're not going to renegotiate the Treaty of Union, that leads to UDI.
Well, if you don't, yes, well, eventually you have to say, well, we're revoking the Treaty of Union. But before you get there, you have to have prepared the path very carefully, and that involves certainly foreign governments, I would have thought.
Well, I mean, but that, if there's no agreement, be it Section 30 or anything else with Westminster, there is only UDI.
The problem with the Scottish case is that we cannot look across the Irish Sea to the Irish case. In Ireland, they have a huge support in the United States, which, for 150 years or more, have supported an independent Ireland. We don't have that support in the United States that the Irish have got for our, so this is the problem we face.
We have to have a civil war to get that kind of support.
We surely not. We can't go down that road.
Right. And then you have the question, if you don't get the agreement of the Westminster government and you do declare UDI, do you think they're just going to sit on their hands?
We're not going to get the agreement of this Westminster government. That's the problem.
Right. So if we declare independence, have a vote, the people say they want independence, and the UK government say, no, it's an illegal referendum, a la Spain, you didn't have a Section 30. Do you think they won't send tanks in?
Well, there's another issue altogether.
Well,
I don't know.
What do you think they'll do?
I'm swithering.
So some way has to be found to bring the Westminster government into negotiations.
Well, it's going to be direct action, people on the streets, mass demonstrations.
Why? Why do you think
Well,
that'll work?
when you make a country ungovernable, then you get action from a government.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's done all over the world.
And they send the army in.
Well, there's another issue. You see, that's a step further on, Norrie.
Well, what do you think they would do? What do you think a Westminster government would do if we were to make Scotland ungovernable? Sit at Westminster and go on the TV every night saying, see, these Scots are making Scotland ungovernable.
You could have a situation like we've seen it over the more recent years, everything from the Arab Spring to Thailand, many countries where there is there's a huge support for independence at the moment. We know what it is in the polls. We don't know what the emotional support is, what the support would be for direct action. We just don't have, that's unmeasurable.
I mean, direct action is meaningless because it would be ignored as readily. Oh, look, there's Scotland kicking itself in the head. What a shame. Oh, look, there's Scotland affecting our bank balance. Send the tanks in.
I'm not going to propose radical revolutionary ideas in public.
Well, I mean, take to the streets, civil disobedience. What's that?
If I take to the streets, I'll just be sitting down and getting arrested. And I don't fancy a cold, damp cell anyway.
Well, the trick is not to end up with civil disobedience. It's to do something that will get Westminster to negotiate either a referendum, the result of a referendum, a new treaty. And frankly, I can't see why they would.
No.
And on that happy note, it doesn't look like Jimmy's going to make it today.
Well, let's just spend 2 or 3 minutes on our awards. The I Write Yearly Awards, as Jimmy called it, so that we can say I write yeah, and then for anything we like after that.
Well, I would rather not. I think we need Jimmy here for this.
Well, we've still got, okay, right. So we'll put it off. We'll no longer make it a Christmas event. We'll make it a New Year event.
Yeah, I cannot help but feel Jimmy's turn of phrase would add immensely to this.
I think you're right.
Okay. I've got nothing else. What about you?
Well, all I would say is that there's a very interesting article in the New York Times which sums up the coronavirus situation, sums up why the world has turned its back on Plague Island, as we're now living in. Have you heard about that? Yes, we're partly in Plague Island. I think it's a reference to a computer game. I've no idea. I'm too old for that. So we're living in Plague Island. As I said, as I briefly mentioned, there is another virus variant which is different to the one that was discovered in the UK in South Africa. I got most of this from the New York Times because they summed it up rather well, whereas what we're getting here in the UK is full of confusion as usual. There is a possibility of children perhaps being involved. There is a possibility, for example, that schools might not reopen. They haven't. It's going to be a couple of weeks, we found out. It seems to be true that half the genomic testing in the world was being done in the UK before this became necessary, before this pandemic. It's just by accident. And therefore the possibility, because they found this variant in the UK, doesn't mean to say it started in the UK. And it doesn't mean to say there aren't other dangerous variants elsewhere in the world. This is the only, if you were going to find a new variant, the first place you would find it would be in the UK.
I think you can sum it up pretty easily. Europe is being very unfair on the UK.
If you want.
Because the UK, for once, truly does have a world-beating genomic sequencing setup. So they found a variant that appears to be more infectious. They did the right thing. They informed the World Health Organization, who then informed everybody else. And everybody else went, Britain's got a variant that we don't know anything about because our genomic sequencing isn't as good as theirs. Let's cut Britain off.
Well, let's just throw in a quote from Dr. Fauci, who is the main medical man that's been appearing on television in America. Not popular with Donald Trump, but Donald Trump found it, he couldn't find it, he wasn't able to sack him. Anyway, Dr. Fauci, immediately after being injected by the new Moderna vaccine, which was just launched yesterday in the US of A, it's another vaccine. He was one of the first people to get it. He was asked a question about this new variant in the UK. And the codicil was, of course, that, the USA hasn't banned flights from London. And yet London is, a hotbed of this new variant. Why not? And as he said, there are so many people infected in the UK with this new variant. It's quite clearly been around for a couple of months. It's already too late to close the border.
Yeah. And that might well be the case in Europe as well.
Exactly. So if he's saying it, I don't see why it can't be true.
I thought from the minute Macron closed the French border, it was political.
That's a good point to make there, Norrie. I wonder why he would do that.
And with that, I think we should call it a day.
Yeah, well, season's greetings to everybody. If you just tuned in later at the end, it's usually, I think anyway, say no more.
Okay. And we'll try and set up an awards show. I'm sure we'll find time to do it. So thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for being with me, Stuart. I'm Norrie Stewart, and we'll catch you on Sunday the 27th.
Hopefully there's something to say
26th.
Sunday. We won't have any...
no, Monday the 27th. No, Sunday the 27th.
We won't
Saturday is Boxing Day.
We won't have political shows to report on, but who knows? Everything's developing so fast.
We'll do a Trump. We'll just make something up.
Well, we've still got Brexit and we've still got COVID, and there's...
And Donald Trump seems to have declared civil war in America. No doubt that'll expand. Anyway, have a good Christmas, and we'll see you before New Year. But enjoy your Christmas, small as it might be. Cheers for now, folks.
Cheerio.